So what if I told you the biggest threat to the internet isn't some super hacker in a dark room, but a massive, completely unstoppable force of nature that's just lurking at the bottom of the ocean? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but today we're going to dig into how a simple underwater avalanche could bring our entire digital world to a screeching halt. Okay, so let's get right into it. We all talk about the cloud, right? We have this idea that all our data, our photos, our digital lives are just floating around up there in the air somewhere, ready for us to grab. You know, it feels totally wireless, weightless, but that could not be further from the truth.
And I mean, really, take a second and think about that. What if it just disappeared? No streaming, no online banking, no GPS, no way to call your family overseas? The global markets would just freeze solid. Supply chains would completely fall apart. How long do you think our society could actually function? Yeah, not very long at all. And here's why. Look at this number, 99%. That is not a typo. It's the wild reality of just how dependent we are. Almost every single email, every video you watch, every dollar that moves between continents, it all travels through these very real, physical cables that are just snaking across the dark, cold floor of the ocean. And this right here, this is the main idea we really need to wrap our heads around. We have built our entire 21st century world on top of this massive, hidden, and very physical piece of infrastructure. We're talking about a network of cables, most no thicker than a garden hose, just lying in one of the most hostile environments on the entire planet.
So, okay, if the internet is physical, that means it can be physically broken. And yeah, we worry about stuff like ship anchors or maybe even a curious shark. But there is a much more powerful and widespread threat that honestly, most of us have never even heard of. You know, we're so conditioned to think of digital threats as, well, digital. We think about viruses, cyber attacks, all that stuff. But the vulnerability we're looking at today isn't digital at all. It's geological. It's literally a force of nature.
That's right, an avalanche. A colossal, cascading wall of mud, sand, and rock, just tumbling down a submerged canyon at an incredible speed. And our planet's entire nervous system is lying directly in its path.
So what exactly are we talking about here? Well, a submarine landslide is what happens when a whole bunch of sediment on a steep underwater slope, think of the edge of a continental shelf, it all becomes unstable and just collapses. And this isn't some gentle slide. It triggers something way more violent.
So how does a bunch of mud turn into an internet-killing weapon? Well, it mixes with the seawater to create this thing called a turbidity current. And the power it unleashes is it's almost unimaginable. It's basically a four-step process of total destruction. First, you have a trigger, usually a big earthquake, that shakes everything loose. Then, this thick slurry of mud and sand starts accelerating down a submarine canyon. Third, it becomes a super dense, super fast-moving underwater river. And finally, the really destructive part, this current is so powerful it acts like a giant scouring pad, and it just obliterates everything on the seafloor, including our vital internet cables. To really put its power into perspective, try to picture a freight train. Okay, now imagine that train is miles wide and it's hurtling through the pitch-black darkness at over 60 miles an hour. But it's not just fast, it's also incredibly abrasive. This thick slurry of sediment acts like liquid sandpaper, and it can just tear through thick steel-armored cables like they're a piece of string.
And if you're thinking this is all just a theory, well, look at what happened back in 1929. A big 7.2 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Newfoundland triggered a massive one of these turbidity currents. It actually took a few hours to reach the first cables, but once it did, it was just relentless. Over the next 10 hours, it systematically just snapped 12 different transatlantic cables, one after the other. It basically cut North America off from Europe. This isn't a hypothetical. This really happened.
So we've established the threat is very real. What would a similar event look like today? Well, the consequences would be catastrophic. It would set off this massive cascade of digital failures.
Now, the internet is designed with some redundancy. If a single cable gets cut, traffic just gets rerouted through other cables. You probably wouldn't even notice. But here's the thing, a submarine landslide doesn't just cut one cable. It can take out every single cable in a huge area, all at once. It leads to this massive continental-level disruption where suddenly there's just nowhere left to reroute the traffic to. And that's when the dominoes really start to fall. Financial markets that rely on those microsecond trades, paralyzed. Cloud services that we all use, like Google Drive or AWS, they could go dark for entire regions. Global shipping, which coordinates everything across oceans, would just grind to a halt. The modern world as we know it would basically be put on pause.
So what does all this mean? It means we have to face this fascinating and, let's be honest, kind of terrifying paradox that's sitting right at the heart of our modern lives.
I mean, this quote here on the slide just says it all, doesn't it? Our sleek, clean digital world is completely dependent on a physical network that we decided to place in one of the planet's wildest, most violent, and most unpredictable places, the bottom of the ocean.
So, if you take one thing away from this, it should be this. The internet is not a cloud. It is a collection of very real wires, and those wires are vulnerable. Our entire seemingly infinite digital reality is tethered to a very finite, very fragile physical one, and we ignore that connection at our own risk.
So the next time you send an email or stream a movie, just for a split second, picture its journey. It's not flying through the air. It's racing through a tiny cable on the seafloor, miles below the waves. And it really makes you wonder, in our rush to connect everything, have we just sort of forgotten how powerful and how wild the physical world can actually be?